Hello and welcome back to Refuge in Conversation with. I'm Emma Pickering and I oversee the Technology Facilitated Abuse and Economic Empowerment team at Refuge. My role involves developing and delivering our strategy as well as supporting the team to ensure we generate income and meet our strategic objectives. I'm joined today by Madelaine Thomas, the founder and CEO of Image Angel, and Sophie Mortimer, manager of the Revenge Porn Helpline. It's great to have you both here today. Welcome. Before we dive into today's conversation, I'd like to mention that today's episode will touch on sensitive topics which may be triggering. If you're listening today and feel you might need support with any of the topics that we discuss, please know that help is available. Here at Refuge, we run the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, where you can reach out for support on 0808 2000 247. It's free to call and is available 24/7. We also have BSL interpreters available from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and additionally, there is a live chat service available on our website. So please be mindful of whether you can access this from a safe device. So my first question is for you, Sophie. Sophie, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do, particularly in relation to intimate image-based abuse?
Thanks, Emma. Yes, I'm Sophie Mortimer. I'm the manager of the Revenge Porn Helpline at SWGFL. The Revenge Porn Helpline is the UK's dedicated national service to support adult victims of intimate image abuse. We provide signposting, guidance on the law, advice on reporting to the police, and assistance with content removal. I'm also part of the StopNCII.org team, which uses global hashing technology to prevent the spread of non-consensual intimate images on partner platforms.
Thank you, Sophie. And Madelaine, could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do in tackling intimate image abuse?
Hi, I'm Madelaine Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO of Image Angel, and my motivation for creating Image Angel is deeply personal. I've experienced firsthand the devastating impact of having private images taken and shared without consent, and I refuse to accept a world where this is seen as just an unfortunate risk of being online. The way we address intimate image abuse today is broken. The burden is almost entirely placed on victims to locate their images, prove they were shared without consent, and then plead with the platforms to take them down, often with little success. And even when images are removed, the damage has already been done. I created Image Angel because I believe we need to flip the script. Instead of simply reacting after the harm is done, we should be making it much harder for the abuse to occur in the first place. Image Angel embeds an invisible, unremovable forensic watermark in every image when it's accessed on a platform. If that image is leaked, we can then trace it back to the individual responsible. This creates a fundamental shift in the risk dynamics, because right now, abusers act with impunity because they think they'll never be caught, and Image Angel ensures that they can be. My mission is to create a world where victims no longer have to bear the burden of someone else's wrongdoing. The responsibility should lie with the platforms and the perpetrators, and never the survivors.
Thank you, Madelaine. Thank you, Sophie. So, Sophie, coming back to you now. In your experience, how widespread is intimate image abuse? And what are some of the biggest challenges survivors face, particularly when it comes to having intimate images removed? So how does the Revenge Porn Helpline support survivors through the process?
I think the issue is much more widespread than we realise. A recent report on prevalence suggests that 1.4% of adult women will experience intimate image abuse each year, which equates to approximately 370,000 women in the UK alone. If you extrapolate that globally, the scale is staggering. It's simply not possible to tackle this level of abuse with the current system, which is largely reliant on manual reporting through emails and web forms. We need to harness technology to make reporting more efficient and proactive, and we must mandate platforms to implement preventative tools that stop this content from surfacing in the first place. The nature of the internet means that images once shared are often reshared, downloaded and distributed again. Sometimes we can successfully remove all instances, but in many cases, even if all images are taken down, the content will resurface and we have to start the process over. This creates an ever-growing burden on an underfunded and under-resourced team. Some of the clients we've been supporting have been with us for 6 or 7 years. It's simply unsustainable to offer this level of support to everyone, much as we would like to.
Thank you, Sophie. I mean, those figures there are really staggering, and I think it just demonstrates the need for why a service such as yours exists. I mean, 370,000 women potentially, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Those stats there are really concerning. Sophie, what advice would you give to someone who has just discovered that their intimate images have been shared without their consent? What steps should they take?
The first thing is always, please don't panic. You're not alone and help is available. The first step really is to confide in someone that you trust, because you deserve support. You haven't done anything wrong. Try to capture any evidence that you can, such as screenshots or links showing where the images have been shared. You don't need to make any immediate decisions, but gathering this information will help you make informed choices. Reach out to the Revenge Porn Helpline for advice, or any of, there are other services that can help. Refuge's Tech Abuse Line, Cyber Helpline. There is support where you can get the sort of advice that you need that will help you make those informed decisions. And we can then guide you through your options and assist you with the removal of online images.
Thank you, Sophie. Can I just come back to you with a quick question around that? So, the Revenge Porn Helpline helps with the removal of the images online. Can you
Yes.
just talk someone through what that process might look like, if that's okay?
So if somebody comes to us, they're quite likely to know that the image has been shared, and they should be able to give us a link in that first instance. We will then check that link. Obviously, we have to be sure that it meets the criteria for the law in the UK of an intimate image, and if it does, and we're confident that the person that we've spoken to is the person in that image, then we will report it for removal, but we'll also do additional searching. So we will find hopefully every instance of that image through using a range of reverse image tools and sometimes some facial recognition technology, just to try and identify all those instances, and they will all be reported. Always, that speed is of the essence, really. We know how fast images can spread across the internet, and images like this unfortunately spread in the very fastest way. So we try and act as quickly as we possibly can to get those images reported and then removed.
Thank you, Sophie. Madelaine, coming to you now. Your work focuses on addressing intimate image abuse from a different angle. Could you tell us a bit about how Image Angel works and the role it plays in both preventing and tackling intimate image abuse?
Yes, so the way we currently handle intimate image abuse as a society is a little bit backwards. By the time an intimate image has been leaked, shared, and weaponized against someone, the damage is irreversible. No amount of takedowns or apologies can undo the emotional toll of experiencing that kind of violation. So at Image Angel, we focus on prevention by making the unauthorized sharing of an image a risk for a perpetrator. Every time an image is accessed on a platform that integrates our technology, we embed it with an invisible forensic watermark that's unique to that user. If that image is later leaked, we can trace exactly who accessed it and hold them accountable. So this isn't just about catching perpetrators, it's about deterrence. If someone knows that sharing an image without consent will directly link back to them, they're far less likely to do it. Right now, abusers act with impunity because they can feel untouchable, so we take that power away from them. The reality is, platforms already have the ability to prevent intimate image abuse, but they've chosen not to prioritise it. They readily implement cutting-edge technology to protect copyright holders and advertisers, but when it comes to protecting users, especially women, from having their intimate images weaponised, then suddenly they claim it's impossible. But it's not. Image Angel proves that we can shift the burden away from victims and place it squarely on those responsible for the harm.
Thank you, Madeleine. And as you've just mentioned there, that they're already utilising technology in relation to protecting copyright and advertisements. So it does raise that really important question of why you're not using this technology. It's readily available and it works. We can make sure that we can deter perpetrators from using these methods to cause harm. So it's really interesting that they already have technology in place in other areas, but when it comes to intimate images, it's not there. Sophie, a question for you. Despite recent changes in legislation introduced by the Online Safety Act, there are concerns remain in relation to gaps in how intimate image abuse is addressed. When survivors seek legal action, what obstacles do they face in obtaining justice? And what are the biggest gaps in the current laws and regulations? And what specific actions do you think the government and tech platforms should take to close those gaps?
The law in the UK has certainly improved, and it's actually now probably one of the best in the world, but there are still gaps. We're waiting for further improvements in the law concerning voyeurism and the creation of synthetic sexual content, often known as deepfakes, without somebody's consent. But there's also a major concern that non-consensual images, even where there's been a conviction, aren't classed as illegal. It's only defined by that in a really limited sense, which restricts our ability to remove content or make it less visible. In terms of other barriers, if survivors report image abuse to the police, the chances of receiving even a charge or caution are just 4%. And that's just of those that report, never mind the huge number of people that we know don't report these sorts of crimes to the police, for very understandable reasons. But the likelihood of a conviction is even lower, barely 1%. Moreover, when the process does move forward, it's often really long and drawn out. Victims frequently report a lack of interest from the police, as well as victim-blaming attitudes, which are sadly all too familiar to those who've experienced domestic abuse or sexual assault. There are civil law options, but these come with significant costs up front, making them inaccessible for most people. The biggest barriers, however, are the deeply ingrained societal attitudes towards women and the structural inequalities that fuel those victim-blaming attitudes. We're lobbying government to make confirmed NCII content illegal. This would allow us to establish a registry for such content, which could be shared with platforms, search engines and ISPs to ensure the maximum possible takedown. And where takedown isn't possible, the content could be blocked from view. Sitting alongside our preventative tool of Stop NCII, it would massively reduce the spread of this content for everybody.
Thank you, Sophie. The asks aren't unreasonable asks, so it just poses the question of why they haven't already implemented them.
It's a great question, and I'd love to have the answer. And it does already exist. There are precedents. So the Netherlands make this content illegal already. It's really clear in Dutch law. So we know that it can work. So why don't we do it?
Yeah, exactly. And we've got an example there from the Netherlands that it's working effectively. So it's something that we can embed here in the UK. And Madelaine, coming to you now, we're currently seeing a lack of accountability for both perpetrators and platforms where images are shared. What needs to change to ensure that both individuals and tech companies are held accountable?
Yeah, absolutely, we are. The first thing that needs to change is the assumption that platforms are passive bystanders in intimate image abuse, because they're not. They are active enablers of harm, and when they refuse to implement the protections that are readily available, especially. Let me be clear, if platforms can detect and remove Disney copyrighted content, for example, they can certainly detect and prevent the spread of non-consensual intimate imagery. The reason they don't is simple. They don't feel the consequences. They aren't the ones being harassed, blackmailed, or humiliated when private images are leaked. Instead, they continue to profit from engagement while survivors are left to pick up the pieces. So, as I see it, we need two major shifts. And the first is that perpetrators have got to start facing real consequences. Because right now, people share intimate images without consent because they assume they won't get caught. Tools like Image Angel remove that sense of impunity. Because if every image carries a forensic fingerprint linking it back to its accessor, the perpetrator can no longer hide behind that anonymity. And secondly, platforms need to be held accountable. Social media and content sharing sites should be legally required to integrate technology that prevents harm before it happens, not just respond after the damage is done. This means actively deterring actions that could escalate into abuse, whether that's tracking and flagging or repeated boundary violations, embedding forensic watermarks to identify perpetrators, or restricting the spread of non-consensual content in real time. If platforms fail to implement these protections, they should face serious financial penalties, legal consequences, and operational restrictions, just like they would if they were failing to prevent financial fraud or data breaches. Protecting users from abuse should not be optional. And if a platform profits from that user engagement, it also carries the responsibility to ensure that that user engagement is not built on exploitation. So it's time that we stop treating intimate image abuse as an unfortunate side effect of the internet and start recognizing it for what it is, which is a systematic problem enabled by corporate inaction.
Thank you, Madelaine. You said something there I think that was really powerful, and that was that they are active enablers of harm. And I think we need to keep reminding people of that they have a responsibility here as well. Thinking about that there, Madelaine, then, do you think tech companies should be legally required to use tools like Image Angel? And what kind of impact could it have if this became standard practice?
Absolutely. The idea that preventing intimate image abuse should be left up to corporate goodwill is ridiculous. If we took that approach to financial fraud or data protection, the internet would be much more lawless than it already is. Tech companies only take action when they are forced to do so. So yes, they should be legally required to use tools like Image Angel. The Independent Pornography Review was an assessment of the legislation, regulation and enforcement of pornography, particularly in the UK, which was published on the 27th of February this year, and it sets out 32 recommendations from the government, and it covers 6 key themes. And in that pornography review, Image Angel and the technology that we use was referenced as best practice. And also it's been referenced by Ofcom in its Online Safety Act recommendations that forensic watermarking could become an industry standard. That would be a game changer. It would turn the collection of images with embedded watermarks into a high-risk crime rather than a risk-free one. Because right now, the reason why so many people share non-consensual intimate imagery is that they believe they'll never face the consequences. And in fact, many don't. If every image had a unique fingerprint that could trace it back to its source, perpetrators would have to think twice before hitting send. And let's not pretend this is some kind of impossible technology. Platforms already have really sophisticated tools to track user activity when it benefits them, whether it's ad targeting or behavioral tracking or content moderation. The fact is that they don't use these same tools to protect people from abuse. It could be seen as a deliberate choice, and that choice needs to be taken away from them.
Thank you, Madelaine. I couldn't agree more. I think that last part there, the choice needs to be taken away from them because they've had options to embed these tools and they've chosen not to. So I think we're at the stage now where it should be a requirement and not a choice. Sophie, coming back to you, we often focus on what happens after the image has been shared without consent, but prevention is just as important. What strategies or interventions do you think could help stop abuse from happening in the first place?
I think there's significant tech innovation in this space, as we've just heard brilliantly from Madelaine. There are tools that enable people to share their images safely and offer protection if something goes wrong. Our own platform, stopncii.org, enables individuals to create digital hashes of their images, which prevent them from being shared without consent on our partner platforms. And technologies such as these should be mandatory for platforms to integrate. User safety must be at the heart of everything they do. If platforms won't implement these measures voluntarily, then we need to look to governments, not just in the UK, but globally, to make these protections compulsory. And of course, that all ties back to that need for cultural change that we talked about earlier.
Thank you. And you mentioned something really important there, Sophie, around global measures as well, because the internet is not just doesn't just happen in isolation in the UK. We know that survivors can be a victim to this form of abuse from perpetrators in other countries as well. They won't just be victims of this form of abuse by perpetrators in the UK. So it's all well and good that we're tightening up the legislation and regulation in the UK, but we need to have global response as well to protecting survivors.
There is something to add there, actually. There's a really important potential step coming this year from the UN Cybercrime Convention, of which Article 16 makes it a requirement for every member state, and there's 193 of them, I think, it makes it a requirement for them to have legislation around the non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And it's quite broad in the way that it's drafted, but it is the first attempt to require everyone to, because this is one of the problems that we have a patchwork across the world of different legislation around the internet, which, as you point out, it's a global thing. We're not dealing with this a country at a time. So it's really important that we start to build some consistency.
It's good that we're making the right strides in the right places and we're looking at the global reach and not just UK perspective. So Madelaine, coming back to you, there's also a broader issue at play here, which is the normalisation of non-consensually shared intimate images and even pornography. How do you think we can shift societal attitudes and reinforce respect for people's autonomy online?
Yeah, the root of this issue isn't just technology or law. It's a culture that treats non-consensual access to other people's bodies as entertainment. currency, or something to weaponize. Non-consensual intimate image sharing isn't merely a technological or legal problem. It's the consequence of years of cultural normalization, where violating someone's privacy is seen as gossip-worthy rather than criminal. The first step in shifting attitudes is to name the problem for what it is: technology-enabled sexual abuse. When someone shares an intimate image without consent, it's not drama, revenge, or a leak. It's a violation. And the language we use really matters. So as a society, we need to stop trivializing this issue and start treating it with the same seriousness as other forms of sexual violence. Secondly, we need to stop pretending that this is an individual problem and start acknowledging the systematic enablers. If intimate images are stolen, why are platforms still profiting off them? Why does mainstream media report on celebrity leaks rather than calling it what it is, which is sexual exploitation? Why are tech companies not held to the same standards for intimate image abuse as they are for issues like trading standards, anti-fraud, copyright infringement? These aren't just ethical failures, they're a choice that allows this harmful culture to thrive. And third, we need to teach digital consent as early and as clearly as we teach real-world consent. If somebody wouldn't physically strip another person naked in public, then why do we think it's acceptable to do the digital equivalent by sharing their private images without consent? Until people fully understand that sharing an intimate image without consent is an act of harm, not a joke, not a flex, not entertainment, then the cycle will continue. And finally, we need to make non-consensual sharing a very high-risk action. Because right now, intimate images are spread so easily because there are no real consequences. If people knew that every image they shared carried a fingerprint linking it back to them and only them, the platforms would act swiftly and decisively, and that survivors would have the legal power to fight back. That landscape could finally start to change. The real radical shift here is this. The internet doesn't have to be this way. It's not inevitable. Just as drunk driving wasn't inevitable, just as workplace harassment wasn't an inevitability, these were once normalized behaviors until laws, education, and culture changed them. And the same must happen here. People's autonomy doesn't end when they go online, and their dignity should never be up for debate.
Thank you, Madelaine. I think that's really powerful. And I think you're absolutely right. The language that we use matters. And that doesn't just apply to the internet, that applies to media, it applies to how the government refers to this form of abuse. I think there's a whole societal shift that we need to take here to make sure that we are holding perpetrators to account, that tech platforms are doing their very best to safeguard users on their platforms, and that we aren't normalising this form of abuse, and we are removing the autonomy, predominantly women and girls, and they are becoming a figure behind a screen, and they are losing their identity in this process. And we really need to look at that, and we need to shift these kind of views and ideas. Final question for you both. So before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you both the same question. If you could urge the government, tech companies, or the wider society to take one urgent action to tackle intimate image abuse, what would it be? And over to you, Sophie.
For me, it would be to mandate the use of stopncii.org. We need every platform to be taking those hashes. And we also need to engage the rest of the ecosystem here, the domain name registrars and the internet service providers and the hosts. Everybody needs to be participating and working collectively. Let's use those hashes, use these technologies that are available to protect people and make it non-negotiable.
Thank you.
I love that. Non-negotiable. Absolutely. The biggest shift we need is for platforms to stop treating intimate image abuse as this inevitability, this byproduct of the internet, and start taking real responsibility for preventing it. Because right now the system is designed around damage control, waiting for images to be leaked, placing the burdens on victims to report them, scrambling to remove what's already been shared. And this approach is broken. It allows platforms to act like neutral bystanders rather than active participants in harm or protection. And what Sophie and I represent are two sides of the very same coin, support and prevention. And we need both. Survivors need access to services like the Refuge Helpline to help them navigate the fallout if harm does occur. But at the same time, platforms must integrate deterrents like Image Angel to make sure these violations are far riskier for perpetrators. If every image had a fingerprint that we could trace back to who shared it, then we would see fewer leaks. fewer victims, and fewer people treating intimate images as a disposable currency for humiliation and control. And platforms already know how to do this. They have strict protections when it comes to copyright. And if you upload a copyrighted song or movie, it's flagged, traced, and it's taken down almost instantly. So why is intimate image abuse treated as a lesser crime? Because they don't care enough to prioritize it. This isn't just about tech companies becoming more ethical. It's about forcing a reckoning with the fact that their failure to act enables and amplifies abuse. And governments need to mandate these preventative protections, not just reactive ones. Survivors shouldn't have to fight for dignity after the damage is done. Platforms should be ensuring that harm never occurs in the first place. And this radical shift is acknowledging that it's not the internet that makes intimate image abuse inevitable. It's the fact that we allow it to remain consequence-free. And if we change that, if we make sharing without consent traceable and punishable, the culture around it will eventually shift. And then when that happens, we'll finally start seeing real online safety, not just the illusion of it.
Thank you both for joining me today. And what you've both suggested are easy actions for tech companies to take. The tools are already developed, they just need to be utilising them. And we need the regulator, Ofcom and the government to support agencies like Image Angel and the Revenge Porn Helpline to ensure the tools are embedded into every platform where we see perpetrators uploading intimate images and content to cause harm and distress to survivors. When perpetrators do upload images or threaten to, they need to be held accountable, and there needs to be severe consequences that deter other perpetrators from continuing to cause harm to others. We will continue bringing you a series of conversations focused on more important topics. If you have been affected by any of the issues we've covered in today's session, please reach out. Contact us on the National Domestic Abuse Helpline on 0808 2000 247 from a device that you think is safe and secure. You can also chat to us online Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. And if you need BSL interpretation services, they are available between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. For information on tech abuse, please visit our website at www.refugetechsafety.org.uk. And Sophie, are you able to please share the details for the Revenge Porn Helpline, please?
Absolutely. The Revenge Porn Helpline is available Monday to Friday, 10 till 4, and you can contact us by email on help@revengepornhelpline.org.uk or by phone on 0345 6000 459.
Thank you. And Madelaine, how can people and agencies find out more about Image Angel?
Image Angel is available on www.imageangel.co.uk.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.